Wow, we got a lot of great news to look at today. The media's going crazy, the politicians are going crazy. There's blood in the water over this Biden debate still. Hasn't calmed down. And as I said, and I think I was one of the first to say it, if not the first, with my reaction to the debate, this is an emperor's new clothes situation, something a lot of people knew for a long time. And the gambit the Democratic Party tried out, it's not working. So here we have pressure building on Biden to drop out of the race over his disastrous performance in the debates. Um, this has scrambled a lot of the military has been scrambled in terms of politics. Suddenly, all the equations could change if Biden drops out. The people who dig up dirt, they're digging up dirt on RFK Jr., a third party independent candidate. Uh, Anything they can do to kind of throw a spoiler in there. We have RFK Jr. with barbecued carcass of dog. Uh, you see, in the United States, our electoral system means that there's only a handful of states that are really in contention between the Republicans and Democrats. These are the swing states, and a third party candidate like RFK could upset the balance. And now people are calculating what happens if Kamala Harris is running for president against Trump. That could have implications. Thus, you got to make sure that people like RFK, who could be spoilers, could are factored out. They want to make sure people don't vote for him if because they've been told by the media how bad Trump is, and now they see really how what a question mark Biden is as well. Could be fears that a third party candidate could come into play. He could never win, but it could be enough to upset the balance in one of those swing states and knock that state to one party or another unexpectedly. This is fascinating. Here's something I'm going to say today that you've never heard anybody say before. LBJ, Lyndon Baines Johnson, is arguably my favorite president, one of my favorite presidents. Now, why would anybody be crazy enough to say that? Because LBJ, it's considered a kind of failed presidency. He was the one who really ramped up Vietnam, and he put into play a lot of these great society things, the government plans that sort of destroyed the underclass, especially black people in the United States. And he's kind of limped away from the presidency, especially in regards to Vietnam, the intractable situation there. But to me, I'm always looking at, again, the context of, and commentary about what's really going on, what's behind it. And what LBJ is an amazing example of a president who, with the best intentions, was led into Vietnam. And if you read, there's lots of documentaries, there's lots of books that detail this, exactly how layer upon layer of people lying just a little bit built up to give the leadership in the United States the wrong impression about what was happening in Vietnam and what our chances were there. And if you study someone like LBJ, it's a it's a good example that would scare anybody away from politics and being president, because it's just people making decisions on the built up wrong analysis and the little lies that were put in at every part of the government that that just got the United States deeper and deeper into this morass in Vietnam. And, him pulling out in the race right now, in 1968 was a key year, a fractious year in American politics, the rioting, the division, the polarization. And an earlier a little show, I talked about some of the parallels between 1968 and this year. They're not exact, but you could see a situation where the American public is very polarized and nobody believes what the other is saying, and people are looking away from democracy. They're looking to violence. And this is the same sort of situation. So, how interesting, my microphone's falling down here, how interesting that among all these other parallels that we've already seen, we could have a sitting incumbent pull away from the elections just as LBJ did. Biden, there's certainly pressure for him to do that now. So LBJ is an interesting case study. Even the whole situation, how the American public by the media was led to believe that Biden was completely ready to be president and the right guy to be president, really no different than Trump in terms of his mental acuity, and that all fell to pieces. Certainly in 68, the issues with Vietnam, where people thought they were going along on the right track, and slowly we have the rug pull where people realize we're really on the wrong track in Vietnam. And just like now, people are realizing they're on the wrong track in thinking that Biden could be the candidate. I'll get to that in a moment. It's an interesting increasing numbers of voters don't think Biden should be running after debate with Trump. But I just noticed that the difference isn't, it's not really that much. Even if an actual poll of voters conducted properly said that 65% had doubts about Biden, that's really amazing, because that wasn't reflected in the mainstream news media that basically was saying he's ready to go, and everything's going to be fine with him, and he's just a few years older than Trump, so that means they're both old, so it doesn't really matter. But even before the debate, we had 65% saying Biden does not have the cognitive mental health to serve as president. So I just wanted to quickly mention this. I've got to get past the booby shots here that on the right. This was a conspiracy theory about why the debates were held so much earlier. Now, after the debates, people are saying, oh, well, the reason there was this unprecedented debate held so early was to enable Biden to fail and then be kicked away from being the candidate. I find that very unlikely, that there's some sort of mastermind figuring out all these things and taking a chance to say we really need to get him out, or we might need to get him out, so this debate might possibly expose that, and then we can get him out. That doesn't seem unlikely. And this is an after-the-fact conspiracy theory. Before the debates, the conspiracy theory was that they were putting this debate so early as sort of a challenge to Trump, and that Trump was basically finished, and they were going to try to debate him early and often, and that would, and Trump would want a debate because now he was a convicted felon, and Trump essentially acceded to all the things they wanted to do in the debate, which is exactly how the White House wanted it. No audience, turning off Trump's mic, all these sort of things set up in exactly the way the Biden White House wanted it. But then again, after the fact, it seemed that probably these debate rules worked in Trump's favor. They kept him from playing up to the crowd and acting like a crazy person, a jackass, as he had in some of the other debates. Was thought that he was hurt in the 2020 debates by kind of seeming like a bully. So I find it doubtful that there's some conspirator in the back who was orchestrating this through the early debate date. Foreign diplomats react with horror to Biden's dismal debate performance, laughing, mocking the United States. And I would point out that outside of the United States, which is most of my expertise is in talking to people outside the United States vis-a-vis what's happening in the United States, that they already knew that Biden was in bad shape. There was no real issue there. And the reason they knew that is because they didn't have the big American media outlets in the United States, other than Fox, which is completely insane. The others, so we have CNN and MSNBC, we have the ABC, CBS, the big networks. They were all running interference for the Democratic Party over many months. And I pointed this out in my earlier shows. How when people would see clips of Biden acting senile, the media would come back and said, oh, what people are saying is 81 is too high a number, but Trump is just 78. That's not so far apart, so that means they're both fine. They tried to reconstitute this story, not in analysis, not in an editorial, not in a commentary, but in a news article that told people they were making a mistake by thinking that Biden might be senile. Overseas, they didn't have that. They just saw that. And an argument can be made, and perhaps in history going forward, when we look back at this, we see that the international order fell away, broke apart. That is the United States' control of that keeps countries in line. During this administration, we have Russia very aggressively invading Ukraine. We have China very aggressively coming out and say they're going to take over countries too, and there's nothing you can do about it. They're almost at war with the Philippines right now, carving out a big chunk of the South China Seas. And we have Iran. What's happening with Israel and Hamas is not really about that. It's about Iran, quite openly pulling the strings of the Houthi rebels in Yemen, quite openly staging at a certain point that's advantageous to them, the Hamas hostage taking, and now, quite openly controlling Hezbollah in southern Lebanon. So countries haven't been emboldened by this. We even have, the more you look, the more examples of countries that are just willing to come out and saying, we don't think the U.S. is in charge anymore. So, for instance, in Venezuela, they had a referendum to say, should we invade and take over our neighbor? See, this is the international order has broken down under the absent leadership. And I'm not a Trump supporter. Not at all. But I think we have to look at what's happening in the world and why it's happening. And if I look at the bigger, broader issue here, I would say it is clear the Democratic Party has a lot of influence in the U.S. media, the main media outlets. They can craft this fake gaslighting, as the kids say now, to influence things. So the question is, not only this, was inflation too. And I covered this, I think it was back in January, where all the big news media came out kind of all together within a couple of days. This idea of the vibe economy. They all wrote about it. I think it was in New York Times, maybe even the Wall Street Journal as well. And certainly in CNN, where they're explaining to people that if you think that food prices are too high or inflation's too high, well, it really isn't. It's fine. It's never been better. And what you have a delusion called the vibe economy. Again, not an editorial, not a commentary in those things. It was a news article telling people they're mistaken. This is clearly political influence behind the scenes. And I don't support Trump. I'm not trying to talk him up or anything. I'm just telling you there's something the Democrats, the question of the age now is the Democratic Party does have a lot of influence in the media. The question then is, should they exert it? Because in this case, they caused a situation where the American people were shocked and they realized that what the news media had been telling them for many, many months now was not true. Again, it was gaslighting's a pretty good term for it. It's, gaslighting is that you see something with your own eyes and then somebody else tells you that's not really what you see, what you saw. So, yeah, alarming moment for American democracy. The question is, I think Americans have to ask, is there anybody who can make quick decisions? Probably there are. But who is that person making those decisions? Is it the First Lady Jill Biden? We look back to an age, a fast technology age. I think it was a presidency of Woodrow Wilson, where at the end of his life, he had a stroke. And yes, I had to stop to look up that fact. It was Wilson. He had a stroke in office, and he famously was controlled, kept in a closed room and controlled by his wife. So foreign governments would have to know that the U.S. might not be able to act quickly, and that maybe the president himself can't make quick decisions. This would have been a more panic situation during the Cold War, pre 1990 era, where the idea was that, say, the Russians would send thousands of nukes off. The U.S. just had a couple minutes, a few minutes, 5 minutes, 7 minutes, to launch their own missiles against Russia. Otherwise, the U.S. all of its assets would have been completely destroyed, and Russia would be left unscathed. And the fear and the knowledge that the U.S. could always retaliate and destroy all of Russia's if it acted fast, if Russia shot all of those, that is what mutual assured destruction is. That's MAD, mad. It's knowledge that if anybody uses all those nukes, everyone's destroyed. But the point is, it's got to be done within a few minutes. So the president has to be lucid. He has to have access to what they call the football, the little briefcase to start the process to shoot off the nukes just within a few moments. So this is maybe not as big an issue now. However, we do have some big adversarial powers. Russia still has a lot of its nukes, and I've said this before. Here's another. When we go forward in history and look back, the greatest the greatest shortcoming of our age, the post-Cold War age from 1990 or so up to the present, has been we didn't work on nuclear disarmament. We didn't make sure that Russia's stockpiles of nukes were taken away, so they didn't have that ability. I think Russia has I think China has about 300 or so. Not as big, but a threat. But certainly they're saber rattling. What's the U.S. going to do if China uses its nukes? If Russia uses its nukes? I think a lot of people didn't think that countries like Russia would rise up again and become authoritarian again and adversarial again to the liberal West. But that is the mistake of our age, that we took our eyes off the ball. So here we have opinion. It's time to go. right after the debate, they said, let's wait a week and see if this thing calms down. See if we could turn that narrative back again and make people think everything's fine. But it hasn't gone away. This is also, this is, there were some of those articles that came out that said, foreign leaders were shocked at Biden's performance. I would contend that no, they were not shocked because they didn't have the media telling them in their countries that everything was fine. In the United States, we have an overlay of that big mass media that by and large was telling people that Biden was okay, absolutely fine. And here we have the Wall Street Journal, I think, correctly reporting that. Yeah, if today's not much of a downer, here we have the world's 91 trillion debt, almost as large as or equal to the size of the global economy. What happens in these cases? Governments have to inflate this away, make it disappear, have austerity measures. Who suffers from it? Regular people like you and I all over the world, and this will cause uprisings, problems, economic turmoil, changes of government, changes of direction in all different countries. In the United States, this has been the fault of both parties, the Republicans and the Democrats. Remember Bill Clinton, the president who did everything the Republicans said they were going to do in the 80s on defense and reforming the economy and internationalism, which is now going away. We're moving away from that. But the one great thing that Bill Clinton did was he balanced the budget. He balanced the budget. And every president since then, George W. Bush, Barack Obama, Trump, and Biden has just added trillions and trillions onto it. Some reasons we had foreign wars under both Bush and Obama. We have the COVID crisis under Trump, but we're at the point, I believe, the deficit, not the debt. The debt is everything that accrues from all the past years that we owe, but the deficit is going up like $1 trillion every 100 days, and there's some studies that show it's even a lot worse than that. So it's also the reason we haven't had a recession for a long time. They've been pumping out this fake money to keep credit cheap and keep the economy moving. There's a reckoning coming, and unfortunately, we are the generation that are going to have to deal with it. And like they say, all around the world, the way politicians have dealt with this, same for both parties in the United States, Republicans and Democrats, they just ignore it. Finally, I wanted to point out this. There's a lot of Supreme Court cases that have come down. It's the end of the term. The Supreme Court justices go home, and then they slowly put out these their rulings. This was just one case. I just wanted to quickly explain. Hardly any new. I don't think any news outlet really explained what was really going on here. There was no one I spoke to on either side of the political divide or impartial who didn't think that these obstruction charges would be overturned at some point. And here's what happened. After the January 6th thing, which was an outrage and everybody was upset about, and they wanted to really send a message to the rioters about not doing what they did, which was trying to stop the certification of the presidential vote, interfere with that process. Really unprecedented in American history. And the incoming government, the Biden administration, was thinking, gosh, we may be facing a lot of protests from all the Trump supporters. We need to tamp this down and send a message. So normally what these guys would be charged with, they were basically rioting. under the law. So the government said, the incoming government said, what we need to do is we need to make all these people felons. So we need to find a law that we can charge all these people with and make them felons for a long prison time. And I'm sure there was some legal aid there saying, well, we don't really have anything. I'll look through the laws. So they found a law. It was a law, I believe, that was enacted for Enron that dealt with people destroying documents. At that time, a lot of people destroyed documents in that Enron fraud case, and their penalties were very light. So they came back and said, next time we're going to nail these people to the wall. So they made these really harsh felony charges for them. So the government had this law that was used to, it was obstructing an official proceeding. It does sound like that this could be applied to rioters, but it was really to stop people tampering with evidence. That's burning up documents, shredding documents. And so they applied this to the rioters, even though it hadn't really been used in this way before, since these rioters were not like workers in the government who were destroying documents. They were rioters. And they tried to apply this to make sure these guys got nailed to the wall with felonies. So it's probably it probably should be no surprise that this was overturned in the courts to say that this is they're purposely using this law in a way that it really hasn't been used before, and that's the story. I find it funny that today in the news media they just throw out a lot of facts and call it info vomit, but they don't tell like what was really happening that led to this. That doesn't just mean a right-leaning Supreme Court decided that all laws are off and now everyone can riot and have insurrections. There's a whole thinking process that went through this, and a whole reason that was pretty good why they had to overturn this, and it will reduce. This will result, I believe, in reduced sentences for those people. Of course, I think they should be charged too, and it would be nice to have a nice long charge. But there's a reason why the felony charges that were brought against them were overturned. So there's a lot of news today, and there's even more here. There's so much big news. Sometimes when you look at the little news, it seems silly. But I think that's about all for today. I'm trying to add context and commentary so we don't get so excited about the news. We don't go off fighting in someone else's battle or war. We're going down for someone else's cause. So this is my latest novel. There Are Still Unknown Places. It's about young people, foreigners, and this is set in Thailand, and Thais who are dealing with the broken promises of the world, and they want to go out to far places to lose themselves or find themselves. And it's sort of a tone poem for our age. It's literature, if I do say so myself. I'd hope you'd read it. It's on Amazon and in some bookstores. And read it and let me know what you think. I will see you next time. Like and subscribe, because since I talk about politics and try to explain things in ways, political parties and news media won't like, I can't get this monetized. I don't even know if it's being served out to people. Please like and subscribe. Say something about it. Comment if you like it or not. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.